You're listening to the AID Network.
Adventures in Design is so much more than illustration, graphic design, printmaking. There's a whole world of different creatives out there, and many of those creatives exist in the world of cinema and TV. Today on the show, we have a director of photography, but if you go through the archives of the Circle of Trust, we've interviewed production designers, we've interviewed storyboard artists. I've even had the privilege to sit across from network executives and ask them how they do their job so we can get a top-down view. I know the entertainment industry can seem intimidating and you don't know where to start, but I got a good suggestion for you. Start with our episodes where I sit down and talk to other creatives, creative to creative, breaking down what they do, how they do it, and even more importantly, how they got to do it. What were those first crucial steps to break into Hollywood, to break into the entertainment industry? Whatever you're looking to get into, music supervision, directing, animation, or running a studio, if that's what you want to do, I've done it, I've interviewed it, and the stories are here for you to listen to. To hear them all, sign up today at AID.network, become a member of the Circle of Trust, get full access into our guide and to breaking into Hollywood. Hey friends, today's episode of Creep Week is brought to you by Jack Prince. They've been here for all 5 years of Creep Week, and I hope they'll be here for the next 5, because what I love about having Jack Prince as our signature sponsor of the show is whatever you're trying to do in the world of creativity or production, Jack Prince can be your friend. T-shirts, stickers, paper goods, whatever you're trying to do, finishing items, take a project, take an idea, call up Jack Prince, get hooked up with a specialist, work through the project, and I guarantee you they'll find a way to help you bring your idea to life for your brand, for your band, or for the business that you're working with. And don't forget, being a middleman is a great way to make a little bit more on whatever design project or service you just did. Don't just send the client home with a file, send them home with a product. And when you do it with jackprince.com/circle of trust. That's right. You save money by listening to Adventures in Design and by using jackprince.com. Let's get started with our next episode of Creep Week. Good design. Welcome to another episode of Adventures in Design. Welcome to another episode of Creep Week. That's right, our 8-episode festivity of all thing Halloween. On the show today, director of photography, Joshua Z. Weinstein. Hello, friends. Welcome to Creep Week, episode 2. I've got 8 episodes this year for our annual Creep Week festivities. One of my favorite times of the year and of the year in our broadcast year, on Adventures in Design. I love putting the theme into the show. So yesterday, good old buddy of mine, the sea monster of the AID network, Sean Snicket Mort, we looked at all things on TV that are going to be Halloween themed. For I guess when we started that 10 days? Track down 10 days of Halloween festivities for you to watch on your TV. And now today on our second interview, we have Joshua Z. Weinstein, who's on the show as a director of photography. But he's done many things in his nice-sized Hollywood career. He's a guy who I feel like represents a lot of folks in the audience, because we're not meeting somebody that's got it all dialed in, that's jumping from big movie to big movie. If you go over and look at his IMDb, which I know you will because you're all a bunch of lurkers, you'll see that he's been a cinematographer, a director, a producer, a writer. When I ask him about this, he says, I'll just do whatever it takes to get the job done. Whatever I got to do to hire myself to show the world my vision, I'm capable and willing to do it. Like myself, he suffers from dyslexia, so not the world's biggest writer, but sometimes you got to overcome the things you hate the most. Just get the job done, to get hired again and to hire yourself, to keep on winning at whatever it is that you want to do in life. The film that we'll be talking about today is called Bikini Moon. You can find everything about it that you need to know over BikiniMoonMovie.com. That's the website for the film that'll give you instructions on how to find them on social media. I believe the movie is playing in New York and LA right now, and it'll be on VOD next month. Why I was excited to talk to Joshua about this project is I'm not the world's biggest horror fan. There's something about that genre that just kind of, I don't know, I skipped out on. Maybe it was my mom showing me The Exorcist way too early in life and it messing with my mind, being like, this isn't fun. I'm not having fun doing this. But it's just a genre that I don't really get into too much. Although I do enjoy celebrating it and I enjoy bringing as much of it to you as I can. But something I always enjoy is the thriller. And the thriller doesn't need to be high-speed chases and gun shootouts and jumping from a helicopter. I like the mental thriller. And this movie, Bikini Moon, it has that. It has a topic that's really sensitive to talk about, but it's, I guess, enjoyable. I know that's a really bad word to use, but it's kind of not enjoyable, but it gives you a great amount of empathy and understanding for mental illness. Because the main star in the film, Bikini, played by the amazing Condola Rochad, who you might recognize if you watch the film that I love, takes place in New York City, all about crushing the Wall Street folks, billions. She's amazing on there. This is a whole different character for her. This is somebody who's spinning wildly out of control. And kind of like Hannibal Lecter, when you're around Hannibal Lecter, you never know how safe you are, because at any moment, a character like that can explode. And this is a more realistic version of that, of being around somebody that's suffering from mental illness, and you never have any idea of anything that they're saying, how real it is to us. It always seems real to them. They're living in so many different realities, but what's the reality to us? And I found that to be very, very scary and a very interesting thing to spend time with. Now, the movie is interesting because it's a movie about a documentary. It's a documentary about a fairy tale. So you're watching filmmakers make this movie, but it really adds sort of a great Frankenstein's monster, the villagers aspect of things, where this woman is falling apart. This woman does really bad things sometimes because of her mental illness. But who's really the bad person here? Is it her for doing the things that she does somewhat innocently because of her conditions? Or is it the filmmakers that put the camera in her face and push her harder for their quote unquote reality documentary? Or is the villain you and I? Because when we see insane things happen in real life, we hold up our torch. We hold up our iPhone and we film it because we think our buddies will think it's funny, or this woman losing her mind in the subway station will get us more likes. It'll get us more attention. Who cares about her? She's just a device and our own personal popularity. It's a really interesting look at society, mental illness, and our guy, Josh Z. Weinstein. He shot it all. He was the one who saw the movie first. And when you watch this movie, there's several different forms of storytelling that go on, whether it's a character holding an iPhone or we're seeing something through a laptop. He had to tell the story as other storytellers. We're also seeing some of the documentary footage that's being done. So he had to play characters himself in this film. And when you watch it, you really realize that he did a hell of a job of just guiding the camera around the lens of this world where there's so much destruction, so much bad vibes coming in all kinds of different directions from different people. And when you watch it, you start to question, who here is wrong? Who here is bad? Who here is evil? So it's not a monster movie as in a guy in a suit with a knife, but it is a monster movie. It is a thriller, and that this is something that could happen to any of us. At any given time, we could go through something that's so big that our delicate brain short circuits and we start having memories or thoughts that aren't our own. And who knows? Maybe something like this is what's waiting for us way, way, way off in the distance. As the body deteriorates, sometimes, as we all know with grandparents, so does the brain. What is your reality? I would think that what feels real to you is your reality at that moment. But is it real to everyone else? Is it real to those around you? A lot of interesting thoughts, a lot of interesting ideas. The more you think about it, the scarier it gets. I know it's not full of blood and gore and weapons and people murdering cats and dogs and children and a head in a box and a guy with a hockey mask on who came from a lake because kids hate him and he'll find you in your dreams and he'll kill you, and a monster from the lagoon and dinosaurs that'll eat your face off. But I'll tell you this, it is scary when you think about how real it is or how real it could be. And it gives you a different view of all of these people that if you're a city dweller like myself, we just walk past the homeless, the insane on a day-to-day basis. But this movie actually makes you spend 100 minutes in their world, understanding a little bit more where they come from. I'm happy to bring this type of thriller, this type of conversation to Creep Week, because after all, the part of telling a really good story is the reveal. Where does the camera go? How do you build the climax? How do you make the monster feel safe? How do you show the disgustingness of the people around you? This conversation is all about framing that story, how we see what we see, because Joshua Z. Weinstein sees it first. Hope you enjoy part 2 of Creep Week. Be back tomorrow when we bring in another installment. But let's get started with today's interview. It's Joshua Z. Weinstein on Creep Week 2018 AID 845. And make sure to check out Bikini Moon when you can over on VOD. Or if you live in one of the cities that it's screening in, make sure to go see it. As I said, you'll recognize Condola Rashad of Billions. You'll also notice Sarah Goldberg if you watch Barry. She's Barry's love interest over on HBO. And then, if you're an old school Sopranos fan, and I hope that you are, because Sopranos started the TV revolution. The Wire perfected it, though. Will Jenowitz is on there, and you'll recognize him as Meadow Sopranos' love interest that, well, got a little bit more than what he bargained for when he went over to the job site. Man, and that's some real world creeping. That's real world Creep Week right there.
Howdy. And I just want to say that Mark just put on his prescription sunglasses, and he says he's wearing them not because he's cool, because he has to wear them. And it reminded me actually of like one of my earliest meetings with a producer for a job.
Yeah.
It was in a dark cafe in New York City, and this guy wore sunglasses the entire time inside and did not acknowledge it. And like in New York, you know, it's not LA. Nobody plays that move, and I was just brought me back 15 years right there.
Well, the problem I have is that, so I have 2 pair of Ray-Bans, one that has a slight tint to it, because I don't like real dark sunglasses. It makes me feel like I can't reach out into the world. So these are prescription, and what I always do is I get out of the car, I walk into wherever I'm at, and I go in the front door, and it's dark. I'm like, regular glasses are in the car. Like, I always do it. So there's many a times where I'm that weird guy in the basement in New York with the sunglasses on, and I acknowledge it to people that I don't know, but to everybody else, it's like, he's just a dick that wears glasses. Like, wife and I went and saw Star is Born last week on her birthday. Because I like to cheer her up on her birthday and take her to a nice depressing love flick. And I'm sitting in the movie theater with sunglasses on. Like, I'm that guy. Josh, how you doing, man?
I'm keeping it together. It's good to know. Don't mess with Mark with the sunglasses. It's official.
It's a total official, but don't worry. You can't say anything to me that the audience hasn't. So it's happened a time or two. You just have released Bikini Moon, which is like the 50th movie that you've worked on. Your IMDb page is as long as my arm. And the thing that made me really excited to talk to you about is that you, to me, seem like a working filmmaker. And not a filmmaker who's like working on, you know, they say they're working, but it's just like big thing to big thing to big thing. Like, you're actually a guy who's out there followed by your passion, doing what you want to do. And it seems like all your projects are, they fit together, but they all seem very interesting. And when I looked over your IMDb, I'm like, whoa, this is a cool guy to talk to, because he's obviously staying very busy, but staying busy on a lot of projects that maybe, you know, didn't go mainstream or go wide. And I wanted to talk to you about that, because it seems like an interesting career, and it seems like you're busy as hell.
Man, it's good being me. No, what the heck to say about all that? Because there's a lot of things going on. Should I start at the beginning, or should I start at the today? You know, it could be Back to the Future right now.
You could break it apart any way you want. I mean, you've worked on a lot of projects, right?
Yeah,
like an enormous amount.
I'm really. It's awesome to be out in the world with a camera and to actually learn from doing it.
Yeah,
and not that to work with some people who are legends that like I've always wanted to work with, like Milcho, who I did the last film with, and some first-time filmmakers or friends that I've never seen any of their work with. So it's really been interesting to. I mean, do documentaries to commercials to fiction. Like I've definitely I feel in New York versus LA, where we're in LA right now. I don't live here, but I do work out of LA. In New York, all my friends do lots of different projects. I feel like it's a really New York thing that like you're not typecasted, you're not in one thing. And so for all my friends in New York, I feel we're all working filmmakers. We're all doing 10 different types of projects at one time. In LA, when I'm here, I do one type of thing, and that's branded documentary style commercials. And that's what I'm known for in LA, and that's how I hustle here, and that's what I work.
Well, see, that's what made your IMDb interesting to me is most of the people that I interview out here in LA, they've kind of gotten into a groove where they do TV shows. One show wraps, they hop to another. But I looked at yours, I'm like, this guy reminds me of The Audience, where it's kind of like you're answering emails, you're answering opportunities like, yeah, documentary, let's go do it. Commercial, let's go do it. Like it seemed like your career represented a lot of us where you're just out there hustling and like taking the opportunities that come your way. But you've also done a lot of different things like cinematographer, director, producer, writer. Like you've had your hands in every bit of the filmmaking experience. So which one of those is the dream equation? Like which one of those are we doing all of this work to get into to do the most of? Like, do you want to be a full-time like director or writer? Like where are you trying to get this all to lead you to?
Yeah. It's funny because again, like I am a cinematographer. I love that job. I love collaborating with incredible artists. I love working with visionaries that I could never touch in terms of their creativity. And I love making images that are arresting and tell the story. I'm very dyslexic, and from a young age, I can barely.
Welcome to the club.
You do, but I could barely write, barely talk. My English skills are shit, and like I tell my stories through visuals. So that is how I am a storyteller. The other things that I've done is just because you don't always get the projects you want to get. So I found that. And if you see, like, I co-write. I'm not a writer's writer. I've written with friends.
2 credits.
Yeah. and producer is like, so I know how to order the bagels, and book the rental cars. And director is just like, literally, I just visually. I just really wanted to tell visually, and I knew that I could tell it visually using that style. But again, I'm not a director who can do. I mean. What real directors do. Yeah,
but when you directed, I believe maybe the last time you directed, you gave yourself the impossible task of making forgive me if I get this out wrong, but you made the first ever full featured Yiddish film, right? Like all about Hasidic Jews in New York City, and I listened to you talk about it because and everything you said resonated to me. It's like I want to walk down the street and be nice to everybody. But when I've walked through Brooklyn before, I'm like, these motherfuckers hate me. Like they really don't want me to be walking next to them in Williamsburg. Like, and it made me feel bad because we're occupying the same space, but one's not acknowledging the other. And you made a whole film about that world. So you may say, oh, I'm not your average director, but what an amazing task to take on. Like, I'm going to tell the story of this sort of underdog sector of society that lives in the biggest city in the United States. They have their own turf, their own way of living. It's like a civilization within inside of a civilization. And I found when I heard you talk about it, I was like, oh, I like how honest and frank he's being about, this is something that's happening that's different than other things. And you decided to make a movie about that, which to me seems incredibly complicated. And then you got people in the audience being like, why do the people talk so fast? And I couldn't understand it. You're like, don't worry. We had like 10 people look over every line of dialogue to make sure that it was proper. Like, it's an insane task, and you're not a regular director? Come on, get out of here. Man, don't bullshit a bullshitter.
I really... There's some... The funny thing about Jewish people is you have 5 people, you have like 27 opinions about something. And like, some of those Q&As got pretty loud.
Oh, you opened a can of worms, bud.
But the funny thing is that, again, that's a great example, is that, I didn't have an opportunity to DP a movie that I wanted to DP like that. And I made Menashe, and then I got this other movie, Bikini Moon, because the director saw Menashe,
Because you hired yourself first.
Yeah, exactly. And I knew what I could do, and I knew what I could do well, And so that film, again, it has to work as a film. If it didn't work as a film on its own, no one would freaking care about that movie. But the thing was, it also highlighted my style as a cinematographer, and I've got a ton of work off that movie as a cinematographer, which again, I respect movies deeply. I mean, I love cinema, and and I wanted to pay respects to like Satyajit Ray and the Dardenne brothers and Italian neorealism and all these films that like I grew up and I was passionate about. I never had a chance to try to throw my hat in and do that style. And now that I've done that, you know, it really has opened up a lot of world and a lot of other jobs for me as a cinematographer to repeat that for other people.
See, that's one of the reoccurring themes that we've hit over and over in the years is that, you know, you're doing one kind of work and you're like, well, I'm sitting here with my camera every day working on films. Why aren't I getting the job that I want? And you realize, like you did, it's like, all right, I'm going to create my own project, do the type of work I want to, and boom, that's when the gate opens, right? Because people know your full capabilities. And Bikini Moon, it is a wild film. And, you know, your aspect of the movie was you were the director of photography. So we're going to talk about the movie from the perspective of director of photography. What an unbelievable task, once again, to throw on yourself, because you're making a movie that is about people making a movie. And inside of it, I counted for you. You ready for this? Inside of the movie, we look at the cinema view. We look at handheld from both the documentary makers and characters in there. We look at the documentary in Premiere Pro or QuickTime getting edited. We see people hold up an iPhone. We see security footage, and we see surveillance. And not only that, we see a fisheye from a laptop. Like, you had 12 different kinds of cinematography views in there, but it's always moving and feeling fluid, and you get lost. Eventually I realize, I'm like, this is the trick. Eventually I forget that I'm looking through the cinema view because I'm seeing this story from so many different angles. And I was like, this is a very bold project to be a director of, because the view is literally changing every 2 or 3 minutes, and who's holding the camera. So when there's a different person holding the camera, we get a different perspective, but a different view of the world. And you had to manage all of those shots.
It just reminds me, I hadn't watched the film in a little while, and
You should watch it. It's pretty good.
Aw, shucks, thing. Right before he came over, I was taking a peek through it, and I remembered this one scene where it's a kind of a little bit of a brawl that happens inside a courthouse in Queens, New York.
Yeah.
And I remember that the director just told all the extras, just whip out your iPhones and start filming this.
Yeah.
And the funny thing with actually, and this is a shocker to me, but the iPhone footage looks so good. We had down-res all the iPhone footage that made it into the movie, actually, because I felt like in daylight, it actually was not. It didn't look as quote unquote, you know, bad as our expectations of what bad would look like.
Right.
And so I was watching it, feel like, man, we really broke the stuff and ran the iPhone footage through trash bags to make it appear bad compared to Alexa footage.
I know that vibe, though, of when you're like, well, we'll just photocopy it and then we'll scan it back in and it'll look roughed up and it'll look punk rock. And you do it and you're like, that doesn't look rough enough. Like, or, I'll call on the phone and then the vocal on the podcast will sound remote. And you're like, that doesn't sound staticky enough. Like, sometimes you have to really like work to get the proper amount of dirt on top of something. All right. So explain this to me. When you watch a film like this, and it's that handheld style, right? There's like a little bit of moving up and down of the camera constantly. Now, if this was the 50s or the 60s, if the director saw the camera moving up and down, he's like, Johnson, you're fired. Get the fuck off my set. You can't keep the camera still. Get the fuck out of here. Go home. You miss your wife? Go see her. Goodbye. But nowadays, we're so accustomed to that bouncing handheld vibe. Explain to me this. What is when you do it, what's the desired outcome that you want? And how much of that bouncing do you try to like tell story with? Like, do you change it on characters? Like, we're all familiar with the style, but I'd love to know from somebody who does it. Like, when you're doing that type of music, you know, like, how are you playing the camera?
Yeah. The secret is to have the director smack you as often as possible.
That's like my first example.
Yeah. You want a lot of violence. You want a lot of, it's basically like being in a football game, you know? You're just tackling each other. But more seriously, you know, it's not the shaking, because you're right. It's just obvious now, the shaking. So you're doing more subtle things like shooting through doorways. You're trying to make it feel like you're creating this false intimacy with people. So there's all sorts of techniques about shooting through objects about the motion of the camera, besides just typically just shaking as much as possible.
But it's interesting because when you first start watching, you realize that the camera's just kind of bouncing a little bit. But as time goes on, you get used to like the style guide of a film. And then all of a sudden, the way that it kind of flows back and forth from character to character, like, it's weird watching a movie for an hour 40 and just watching it primarily on the way that it was shot, because that's what we're talking about today. I realized that you had another unbelievable task that a lot of times in this film, because you're filming a movie being filmed, you've got a lot of people in a stairwell, right? You got 6 people piled into a stairwell that are shooting a subject matter. Then you, the real crew, you're on the backside of those guys. And I kept wondering, like, do you tape out a spot on the floor? Like, don't go past this moment because we can't swing over and get you. Like, how do you keep the football team in the proper spot of the field so that you guys can stand back and kind of map everything out?
Well, first of all, I mean, this is really a testament to Milcho Manchevsky, the director, and our collaboration and what he's done. You know, he's the Oscar-nominated director Before the Rain. He directed episodes of The Wire, and he ran NYU's
best show ever.
Amazing, and he ran NYU's grad program for years too. And he taught Kerry Fukunaga and many others while he was running that program. So he is literally the most knowledgeable person, and every day on set was a masterclass. But one thing he really, I mean, that he swears by is everything is pre-planned. So no matter how insane things look on the camera, none of it was not thought of and choreographed beforehand. So we would go with a little DSLR and we'd map out where everyone would be and what every camera movement would be. And obviously things change the day of on set. Sure. But it's all very, very orchestrated to like, so the camera movements, yeah, I would just jostle the camera more to make it like I had to act. It was the first job as a DP that I had to also act because I had to imagine how the actors were feeling who were carrying the camera. But and a lot of times I wasn't good at being surprised, so we had to redo takes of me really flailing the camera. But yeah, so that was all pre-planned and decided on and choreographed, you know, with me and him and the AD before we got to set.
You speak of The Wire, and it reminded me, like, I love David Simon. Anything that he watches, sign me up for it. And most of the time, like The Deuce, I'll let that wrap up. Because David Simon projects, I want to watch one after the other after that. I wanted to watch one a day and live with those characters for a week. But he said that the first time he went on the set of The Wire, that he knew the script, knew a guy was going to pull out a gun and shoot somebody. And he saw the cameras go over to the guy to grab the gun and then to go back. And he's like, no. It's not how the real world works. I want to hear the bang and then have the camera react. And that really got me going down a road of thinking about film where is the camera giving away too much? Like, is it following you? And on this movie, the reason why I asked that question is because I noticed that there was just like a poetic movement to it. And even in these crowded shots, it doesn't surprise me that it was all rehearsed because I'm like, the camera just like knows exactly when to sway over, almost as if you were shooting a big master shot and moving the lens around in post. Like, that's how smooth it goes by. But there are those little bumps so that you know that somebody's there holding it. It made it really intimate, and it made me forget that we're a camera crew outside of the documentary crew. Like, it really sells the 2 levels of storytelling as it goes on, and you get used to what's happening.
But that's a great example of the dogma we had was like, you have to, I as a cameraman have to react to a reason to move the camera. So I have to hear the gun go off before I'll move the camera. Right. I can't move the camera before the gun comes off. So that was part of our whole preparation. And, you know, it makes me think back of, I want to think it was a Polanski film, or was it The Conversation by Coppola? But just, you know, I think it was the first time I saw this was in the 70s, where people speaking would be purposefully, you wouldn't see their faces or their mouths, you know? And that was wild for a lot of viewers back then in the 70s when that happened. It went against the expectations of like clear, clean shots. If the star's in the frame, you know, we want to know what the star's saying. Right.
It's something I've started to notice is that, you know, I'm a little bit of an amateur, like, you know, I record vlogs and stuff and put them on YouTube. And so I'm always like trying to frame, you know, the right shot. And as I watch more and more film and I pay attention to where they put the star, it's okay to cut off the person's forehead, right? Like, a lot of times you don't see the top of the head. And I noticed in some of your shots, in particularly when Sarah Goldberg, Kate, was speaking, there's a couple of shots of her where it's like you kind of see her like 2 inches above her eyebrow. And then that's where it cuts off. You don't see the top of her head. Is that something relatively new that's been happening, like a more intimate shot? Because I feel like back in the day, you saw everybody like from shoulders to the top of their head with a building behind them, you know? And I feel like nowadays we're allowing the camera to get way more up and personal.
Yeah. I mean, I noticed that in the French New Wave that was being done, which was probably revolutionary then. But
what time period is that?
French New Wave is the 60s.
Okay.
But now, I mean, first of all, a lot of people are watching things on their iPhones, or on their computers.
Sure.
So the whole idea of a close-up has probably gotten a lot closer over the years. And also our expectations of, they're not beautiful. We're going to see, what I loved about working on Bikini Moon was that, like, Sarah and Gondola, and who are two very beautiful women. We didn't make them overtly beautiful. You saw some blemishes on their faces. We didn't try to get rid of all those things, and it just feels raw and realer. And I think audiences need that these days. They don't want to see all the Photoshop that we're used to be.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there wasn't like a ton of makeup always on Condola, but for a woman that lives on the streets, she was always a perfect 10. She could come out of a trash bag and like, yep, she's still beautiful, no doubt about it. But I watch her on Billions, where she's a very controlled government level lawyer, and to see this character go wild, and there's some sort of mental instability going on, and we never really kind of get a vibe on where it came from, and I don't even know if she really was a vet or not. You can't really trust anything that she says. But to me, one of the reasons why I was excited to do this during our Halloween festivities on the podcast is a movie like this to me is way scarier than Friday the 13th or Halloween, because your main character, Bikini, she's like a Hannibal Lecter type. She's so impulsive and so chaotic and crazy that she's capable of anything in any moment. And I would always kind of watch how I was trying to see if I could get a cheat on how close the camera gets, if that would tell us if are people in danger for being around her. And it was weird. It was like she was always framed as if it was normal through her eyes. You know what I mean? And there was always like a normalcy around her, even though what she was doing was very abnormal. And I just found it to be a bit of a monster movie in a way, because like you can't trust her. You don't know what her reality is. You can't get too close to her. But like a true monster movie, like you said in the train station, when the people start holding up the phones, it's like, but who's really the monster? Right? Like every monster movie, that's the thing. There has to be empathy. But at the end, when the villagers are running with torches, you're like, yeah, but who's really the monster here? And it had that element into it. Hey, friends, I'm excited to announce we have a new sponsor to the AID.network. First, let's do our homework. We have jackprints.com/circle of trust to save you money on any kind of printing you could think of. But I've signed on 2 specialty sponsors. If you're looking to get your pen game strong, remember, you can't spell brooch without bro. Head over to pengamestrong.com and you'll get a discount on your next enamel pen order. But pens aren't the only things that we need to tell our visual story. And that's why when you hear this sound, you know that the Grizzly is getting ready to pound. That's right. Grizzly Wheeler has come on board as our official AID.network patch sponsor. So if you're looking to get a quality embroidered patch, different styles to choose from, contact Grizzly Wheeler today at grizzlywheeler.com and tell them the AID Network, Circle of Trust, me, Mark Bricky, sent you, and you'll get that Circle of Trust sweet, sweet discount. Just another sponsor coming on board to make the network stronger and to help you out with your career. So let's do our homework again. If you need printing, t-shirts, stickers, or posters, jackprints.com. If you need enamel pens, pengamestrong.com. And if you need patches, head over to Grizzly Wheeler, our brand new sponsor. And I'm excited to get AID Network and you into the patch game. Let's get back into our interview with Joshua Z. Weinstein. No relation.
Oh, she plays Broken so well. I saw her after this film. After we finished shooting it, she was in Dollhouse Part 2, and she was nominated for Tony for that role. And I don't know how she has so much control with her body, with her face. Like, she has, obviously she's very gorgeous and attractive, but there's also something about her where she can show that rawness to her, that she can show just all her vulnerability and surprise us, and that's what the whole film is about, is like mental illness makes you do things that you could never imagine. And when she's doing things that I could never imagine, both very humorous, other times very scary, it is actually a surprise for me when I was on set. So I'm glad that translated to the viewing experience.
Yeah, it would be fascinating to know how someone like her, like, when do you just realize that you can play your face like an instrument? Like, she can play her face like the guitar. You want a sad song? I'll make you a sad song. You want something that's chaotic and crazy? I can do that too. And I was thinking about it, like, when you do those shots over and over again, obviously she gives you so much different every time for you guys to pick from. But when you do one shot, like, how do you let that go and be reactionary in the very next take? You know what I mean? Like, if you just did something and it was loud and it was crazy, and I'm sure some of those days, like, it's kind of emotional watching her break down 2 or 3 times. But how do you, like, hit record and jump back in and follow it like it's the first time and have that eagerness?
I'll tell you the truth, you're seeing the best takes. I fucked up a lot. No, but actually, Milcho is so exacting. And again, he rehearsed for a week with all the actors. Then, you know, every shot was pre-planned. So we got on set.
Do you come in when they're rehearsing?
I did come in too, yeah.
Okay.
Again, being with him was masterclass. You just want to watch and hear everything he does.
Yeah.
You're going to learn so many insane stories of his life experiences from growing up in like Civil War, Macedonia, you know, war-torn Yugoslavia to living in the U.S. But we would literally do no more than 3 takes of any take. You know, it would like, and I tell people this just to teach my friends like what you have to do on set. We would do the first take, and he would just be pulling out his hair looking at the monitor. Just like, so, like, sometimes getting upset, you know, really. And sometimes you have to get up and walk out and take a moment with his thoughts. He'd come back, he'd have exact notes for performance moment here, my camera moment here, this moment there, extra moment there. Take 2, a few more notes, take 3, next shot, you know? So, like, I've never seen someone all consumed with getting perfection and not only wanting it, but also having a plan to achieve it. You know, I think many artists have ideas in their brains but can't articulate it.
Oh, yeah.
He was incredibly productive at working with the whole crew to get the exact thought that he wanted. And everyone appreciated that, because, like, if you're exacting and you say, I wanted it to go exactly like this, people will do it for you.
Do you think that you picked up on some of that, like how to be a critic of your own work in real time, and next project you'll be able to get a closer version of what you think is perfect?
I mean, this was making Bikini Moon was the greatest learning experience I've had. And sometimes it takes a dozen years of work before you can actually get on set and then relearn all these things for new again.
Yeah, that's interesting to say relearn, because to me, being a creative of any sort, sort of like, you know, the medium is irrelevant. It's like every project teaches you new lessons, you know, and then when you get a decade in or 2 decades in, when you can still do something or work with somebody that shows you a whole new angle on things, like, that's those moments when, like, it all opens up and you're like, I'm ready to go back to work tomorrow. I've been doing the same thing for 2 decades, but I'm ready to go back to work tomorrow because I can't wait to play with this new shiny toy that somebody taught me how to use. One of the things I found fascinating is the depth of field, right? Like, to have, because I could tell you guys were in a real car moving down the street, none of this bullshit stuff where you green screen in the windows. Like, how do you get the lighting perfect? How do you get the depth of field perfect? Like, how do you get Bikini just going down the road in Manhattan and her face is crystal clear and you got the highlights and the lowlights, but everything behind it is just perfectly blurred out to just big candy-like circles and balls. Like, how long does it take you to set that up?
It's so funny. I was watching that scene today and thinking, man, it stunk in that van, because
so many people in there.
So many people. And not only that, though, but she's a smoker, Bikini, in the movie, and we didn't use real cigarettes. We used like these fake cigarettes, which smell 10 times worse than tobacco. And give it up to Condola for keep on sucking those things down, because they just smell rancid flesh. I don't know what the smell is.
Ugh.
It's pretty hideous.
I'm gonna start smoking those. Yeah. just to be even more offensive than like guy with marijuana pipe and bar. Like, no, it's my brand of smoke. But like, how long do you set that up though? Like, how long does it take you to get all that dialed in where you're like, all right, you can now drive the car, and I think I've got it for the next 5 miles? Well, 5 miles would be impossible in New York.
In New York City. No, you could do a third of New York City in 5 miles.
5 blocks. I threw over.
Probably pretty quick, actually. That could probably be done in like, we already pre-scouted streets that have good neon lights on them. So, we didn't like any of the streets. We just already picked the streets that already had interesting lights.
So that's all natural light that's reflected on her.
We spent a lot of time scouting. I think to do movies like this, scouting is your best friend. What you could do, what can the environment do for you that you can't do yourself? Oh, actually, I think we lit her with an iPhone, actually.
Oh, I know that trick. I know that trick at Disneyland. You stand over there with an iPhone. I'll take the photo of the portrait. Done. We got it. Yeah, no, that's great. And then there was other times where when there was a scene where they're sitting in a field and you can't tell if she's lucid or not, but with the depth of field, all you see is her face, and she's this completely beautiful person, but everything you're hearing from her is that she's broken. And the fact that the background is just completely blurred out, it's like, it really makes it feel intimate, like it's just you with her and the rest of the world doesn't exist. Is that given to you on a shot list? Like, we want this one completely blurred out? Is that something that you do in the spur of the moment? Like, how do you pick those moments?
The story behind every shot is so much. Actually, this one is more interesting than most shots, but that was not planned. Here's what really happened. We were shooting in a house deep in Queens, and the house was on a private kind of area. There's actually a bunch of private streets in New York City, so we're filming on a private street. The house was not a private street, but it was in a condominium private street, so they wanted us to pay a fee, an absurd fee, like tens of thousands of dollars to shoot on the street that day. And we didn't have tens of thousands of dollars for that shot. So what do? The people on the street bring a truck filled with manure and leave. I mean, this is total mafioso stuff going on. Right
in New York, I'm shocked.
Yeah, shocked, right? Right where we wanted to put the camera, there was this truck full of manure. Right where, because we told them where we wanted to do the shot. We told them everything because we wanted to get the permit to shoot on the street. The truck was left there, stinking up the place. But we had to shoot it anyway. So that's how we ended up shooting a direction we didn't want to shoot, and we had to blur it because it didn't look great that way. And that's why we ended up doing it.
So that's a trick sometimes, just to get rid of what you can't show in the background, or to make it work in a direction you didn't plan?
Well, I think, I have all sorts of tricks for false intimacy, and I hope they only work because we're using it to create real intimacy and that the performances work with it. But coming from the doc world, there's just so many techniques that you learn about how do you make things work when they really shouldn't work, and obviously blurring the background is an easy, quick fix to it.
When you do a movie that is about people making a documentary, and you've made a handful of documentaries, how much it's a hard thing to sort of get out of my mind, but you're making a real movie, but you need to acknowledge what they're doing, but you can't acknowledge it too much because you're not making a documentary, you're making a scripted, piece of film. So was there ever a moment when you forgot that you're not the guys in front of the camera and that you're the guy behind the camera? Like, did you ever sort of get impulsive to what they were doing because that felt more real to you? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, totally. No, you have to, every time you push record, you have to just be reactive. And obviously you know what the scene is, but you're literally waiting for the right eye tick. You're waiting for the right hand motion. You're waiting for the right person to come up before you make a movement. So I am very attuned to the energy. It is a ballet. And then what really shocks you is when they do something unexpected, like we were filming in East New York a lot, that whole scene where we find her and where she's living underneath the subway terminal. Yeah. So one day we're filming on the street out there, and out of nowhere, an MTA bus loses its brakes, okay? Coming right at our crew. I mean, whoa. 40 people are just on the street right now. Literally almost hits people from our crew, inches away from their face, and crashes right into our pup tents with the food underneath it. We lose a few C-stands, but literally, that's the day and how it shook everyone else's life, that, life could be over in an instant. And again, we're all safe. We're all on the sidewalks. We're doing nothing that's wrong. Right. But any bus, any car can just lose.
Yeah.
and just destroy. I mean, literally could have killed a dozen people that day.
Did the food get damaged?
Oh, yeah. We had nothing to eat for the rest of the day.
That's a sad story.
Yeah, sacrifice.
You worked a lot for this film, and we thank you for your service.
Yeah. Amen, brother.
Give me an example of a movie that you've watched where the average person didn't see the technical aspect that you were acknowledging. We both bonded over The Wire or whatever. What's a piece of somewhat mainstream? Don't pull out Tchaikovsky's French Revolutionary when he was fighting with the Germans. This piece in '65. What's a fairly pedestrian piece of work that you're seeing technical things that are blowing your mind, but that person sitting next to you at the AMC is just this is a good movie about monsters. Give me one of those examples. I'd love to know what you see that I can't.
Yeah. Well, I think I mentioned already, but the Dardenne brothers. Have you seen any of their movies before?
Give me some names.
L'Enfant, Rosetta.
Come on, man! I said mainstream.
I know. Well, they're these. Let me say what they are. They're these Belgium brothers. They make films.
Okay.
They've won Cannes a few times, and they do a lot of non-actor long takes.
Okay.
But their films are very accessible. If you've watched them, you'd find them very enjoyable. They're just about really working class people in Belgium, from the town that they live in. But anyway, what they do, and what I've tried to emulate a lot in my career, is they have this incredible ballet where every scene is one shot, and everything happens: a close-up, a medium shot, a wide shot, all in one take, and it's all handheld. And the thing is, it's just that choreography between the camera, the actors, and the location. Like, that is really hard to feel off the cuff. And if you watch their films, every scene, you really want to watch that scene again to see how well they did it. And the reason why is they're able to do it is because they're European. They get a lot of state money. They shoot their films in like 60 days. So they basically do a scene a day where they can just rehearse a scene all day, block it, then do a next one, Yeah. While us in America, we do 4 to 5 to 7 scenes a day, know? So
you're always hustling.
You have to hustle more, and you can't really do the experimentation on set.
On those long shots, I've come to realize that a lot of times those long shots that we see, they're actually lots of shots stitched together in ways that we don't notice. Like somebody walks by the camera, you got a black spot to stitch it back together, right? So when you watch those, is it like watching a guy do a wheelie and you're like, how long is he really on his back wheel for? You know what I mean? Like, can you watch those and be like, that's the edit spot? Like, or do you hit the stopwatch and like, all right, cool. Well, he got 1:20. That's pretty good.
I know. No, you definitely appreciate it.
Yeah.
But, when it gets too gimmicky, it really turns me off. So, in Birdman, and you're watching that the whole time.
That movie was horrible. Did you work on it?
Yeah. I did everything. No, I didn't work on it. No. That's an example of like one that I did watch, and I was just like, I did know. I mean, if you know what you're looking for, you notice them,
right?
And I just didn't. It didn't add anything to the movie for me, just to know that it was like a fake one take movie.
Yeah, I think the first time that I really noticed the art of the real long shot was Goodfellas, when Ray Liotta's characters coming into the bar and they started introducing all the characters, and that was one of those films where it's probably 18 minutes in before you get the opening credits, and by the time that they show you're watching a movie, like, I don't want this to ever end. I already love all these people and know that they're despicable, but I remember that shot of like going into that nightclub and just sort of the camera just weaving around and finding every character, and I'm like, oh man, more of this, please.
Did you see Sisters Brothers?
Not yet. Is it released yet?
There's something story. Yeah, it is. It's like Sisters Brothers is like a Sergio Leone style. So it's like a French director making an American Western in Spain.
That's a lot of levels.
It's supposed to take place in the 1800s. And you know what you watch, and I notice a lot of movies, is like, well, there's two things. I mean, they're both storytelling, but Save the Cat, you know what that one is? Mm-hmm. Which I loved in Inside Llewyn Davis, that literally Oscar Isaac's character loses the cat in the first scene, so he doesn't save it. Yeah. But in Sisters Brothers is a scene of like where the horse dies, and like every movie at the 2/3 mark has the horse dying.
Yeah, I didn't realize that.
In Menashe, we had a chicken dying, a little chicken. And Tony, anyway, you'll notice that there'll be like always like it's called the all is lost moment. Anyway, there's a couple of screenwriting things that like I find annoyingly obvious in a lot of scripts.
See, one of the things that I pick up on from being an obsessive TV watcher is that on a lot of series that are coming back, second to last episode, it goes two ways. It's either all of the story, and then the last episode is just setting it up for next year, or the second to last, they just dip out and tell you a whole side story because they want to save it for the end. So I've gotten down to where when I watch the last 3 episodes of a season of TV, I can figure out which playbook they're calling from. Almost like in the NFL when they're like, they're going to run the ball. They're going to run the ball. They're going to pass. Like, I can look at it and go, all right, I know what I'm in here for. And, like some shows, it's almost predictable that their 10 episodes, they pull from the same playbook season after season, which really annoys me. It's like, mix it up, man. You got 10 hours.
Yeah. 2-point conversion, baby.
Yeah. There's a lot more of these days. All right. So to me, when you made this film, it felt like a thriller, and I really never knew where it was going, and I was trying to study it from your angle. But the thing that I always find fascinating about your job is you're the first one that sees the movie. Like, you're on the front lines, right? Like, the director is sitting back there watching a monitor of what you're seeing, but you're actually on the front line. So when you watch it back and it's edited and you're now sitting in my seat, how different does that feel from the day that you were in the room or in the car smelling the horrible cigarettes? Like, that's got to be wild to like go back into the cheap seats after being on the absolute, like, you're the first person to ever see the movie.
Yeah, it's really hard to undo the movie in the way you expected it to be edited. And actually...
Oh, yeah, you don't edit them.
No. So you're not involved at all. So all of a sudden, all the ways you imagined it to be cut together, it's not. So
that's got to be painful.
There's always a little bit of anger in the beginning of it. But, you know... it's also surprises, and so it is hard. And then, you know, we spend a week color grading it, so then you're just looking at it frame by frame, working on each frame. So to actually,
you're a part of the color grading process.
Yeah, of course, 100%. I mean, it's super important. You know,
are you given style guides ahead of time of we want the movie to look like this when it's done, so that you can make real time decisions to get you closer to that final product?
It's a collaboration with you and director, and like, so we did camera tests. We made LUTs with Will Cox, the final frame. He did his colorist, and he made the LUTs for us. So then we shot on, before we made the film, we did a shoot. We had actually, it's really difficult because Condola is pretty dark and Sarah is pretty light skinned. You know,
I was wondering about that when you have two people whose skin tone is so contrasting,
so different,
and you've got to try to bring it together with a camera and lighting and stuff.
So we did a lot of, you know, skins on people, on African American skin tones, and also white people skin tones, and we put them in the same frame. So one of it was just to get the right exposure for both that, but two was also to make the look of it. So
do you do that with extras?
Oh yeah, we did.
Stand-ins?
Yeah, we did it with stand-ins. We didn't do it with them.
How when you're picking people, do you have to, like, how close to their actual skin tone do you have to get, or it throws it off?
You know, you try to get as close as possible.
Yeah.
And so then we made a look.
What a bizarre task.
I know, no, totally. I mean, but you're right. The nitty gritty of stuff.
Yeah. Hey friends, I hope you're having a great time hanging out with myself and Joshua Z. Weinstein. Z doesn't stand for Zorro. I asked. I was so disappointed. I was really hoping it was Zorro. But what a great guy. And what an adventurous guy that's just making the project that he wants to do for himself, showcasing to the world what he's capable of, and boom, lands Bikini Moon. You heard my review at the beginning of the show. If you watch this film and you watch it through the lens of how it was put together in the world of cinematography, and as Joshua being the director of photography, what a fantastic job that he did. And I'm glad that we hit it off so well, because I feel like this guy, he's got a lot of gas left in the tank. Probably going to go pretty far, and maybe he'll be one of our buds that drags us along with him. Fantastic interview. Coming up in part 2, I start to ask him, what were sort of the pieces, the obstacles that you had to overcome to get this far in your career, and what do you see that next set of obstacles to be? I find it exciting that we found him right after he's starting to get the fruits of his labor, which is hiring himself. This is something that you've got to do. I can't encourage this enough. Sign up today for the Circle of Trust at AID.network. Not only will you hear the second part of today's conversation, but you'll have access to all of our workshops. And a lot of the workshops I've done over the years, the overall theme is always getting into the mindset of you have to hire yourself first. That creates a project that shows the rest of the world what you're capable of when you don't have limitations of a client that doesn't have the same vision of you, or crazy deadlines that make you not do your best work, or a limited budget where you don't feel like you're worthy of all of your extra efforts because the money doesn't add up. What you look like when you put your best foot forward. We have all of those over there in our workshops, plus tons of interviews like this, which is the proof in the pudding of look at Josh's career. It's taking off. He just got to do a fantastic film. I'm sure the next 3 things he has lined up will be even bigger and better. And it all started when he went back after being experienced in the field, but hiring himself, making his own movie and showing the world, this is what I'm capable of. I'm here to get hired. Let's do this. And it happened. And it'll happen for you. Head over to AID.network, become a member of the Circle of Trust, get access to all of those workshops, get access to all of our interviews, and the full portion of today's episode. Become a member of the Circle of Trust. As you've heard today, the only sponsors we have here are people that help you further your career, help you get discounts, help you make the things that you want to make, and the rest of that comes from the audience. I don't want to be on here telling you about dumb things that don't pertain to you. I just want to do good storytelling. I want to give you a little bit of insight to get further in your career, because I know that was always the thing that I felt like held me back. I just didn't know what's next, and now we all do. Sign up today at AID.network. Let's get back into our conversation with Joshua Z. Weinstein, no relation.
Then we did these LUTs, the director proved it was after like also looking at film references, and photo references and a lot of other things. And then we shoot the film. The LUTs give or take are what we try to do it. But then, you want to do additional things. A small thing is, I don't know if this is a new thing or not, but asphalt, I'm positive has gotten lighter in color over the years.
100%. It's almost, if you really look at asphalt, it looks like a bunch of little rocks glued together. But back in the day, it used to be blacktop.
Totally, right?
And it was just like a jet black that faded over time with the sun.
So I found, like, one thing in color grade is I try to make my blacktops blacker.
Oh.
It's like a small thing that, like, it's... yes, our eyes know that it's not so black, but in the camera, I actually want them to be blacker than they actually are.
Well, that's part of the art of storytelling, right? Like, if, you want sometimes the sky to be bluer than it is, or the trees to be greener. Like, you want to amp up the things that you feel matter, or like sell that it's a sunny day or it's a warm day. Like, I always think it's funny when it's Mexico, it always has like an orange tint to it. Oh, it's so hot in Mexico. Everything looks orange in Mexico. And I find myself when I go there on vacation or to visit friends, I take a photo. I'm like, do I color grade this to look orange so people know that I didn't take this shot in San Diego, that I went across the border?
You're not wearing the right sunglasses,
How dare you, sir? When you're all that studying that you do, the going over the shots, the working on the lighting, you put all that time in. When you hit record, can you really like call back what you just studied a week ago, or is it just sharpening the skill so that you're better a week later?
The director believes I remembered everything that was said in prep. The whole goal is to fake it on set. No, but you have like I come with notebooks and lighting schematics. Just a lot of prep, because your shoot day is 12 hours. You have a lot to do every shoot day.
Can it go over 12 hours?
It can. There's overtime, but producers don't want to know why you to be. And again, the buck stops with you a lot of times, the DP. Like, every department's talking to you. Every department wants to know your thoughts. Every department needs answers now. So if you're not prepared for that, a small thing could eat away like a half hour, an hour, and all of a sudden, you are not a happy camper, or no one's happy a camper on set.
I'm obviously not asking what you make, but do you get paid hourly on a project like this?
So for this project, I got paid a flat fee to do it.
Okay, that's what I would have guessed.
But other films, usually it's a day rate, though, is what you get paid.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that it could be different. Like, some people are day rate, some people are flat, and some people are there by the hour. Like, I'm sure there's all kinds of moving pieces on what one set costs per day.
Yeah, most people are on day rates. I think for films like this nature, a lot of the heads of departments will just be flat rates.
Yeah. So for you love The Outsider, right? Like, all of your projects, the one thing that I could kind of tie, not the commercial work that you did, because that's its own animal, but all the projects that I saw, like, all right, this was one of his passion projects. The through line that I found on all of them was The Outsider. So when you got the call to do this project, you had to be excited, because this looks like organically something that you would have been attracted to all on your own, much less somebody else has wrote it, came up with it, and they're bringing you in to shoot it.
Yeah, the thing is that I have worked with so many really important documentarians, and just seen the hypocrisy of a lot of people working documentary. A lot of people working docs, you think that, they're altruistic people, they really care about the subjects. And again, and many people who work in documentary actually are wonderful people who are altruistic and really are humanitarians who want to do the good for the world. But also other people working in documentary are just doing it to be famous like anything else, And I found the hypocrisy of the documentary world, that it was great to see a film that kind of captured that and showed it for what it really is. Because I feel like it's kind of a hidden secret that some people are not as good as they seem they are.
Absolutely. When you would see the people that are making this, the documentary that you're filming, and they're like, it's a natural moment with a broken woman and her child. I'm like, could you do that again with more emotion? You're like, whoa. The first couple of times I heard that, I'm like, what? But anybody who's ever edited anything with video, you know that the entire time that you're working on it, you're trying to manipulate the person at home. And every decision of an extra 2 seconds of this, an extra second of that, fade out the black, how the music comes in, like every second of making a video piece is like songwriting. You're always working on the rhythm of how you want the person to feel. And when I look at something like this, I study every shot and every cut because I know that it's a team of people that are trying to execute the same emotion.